Hi, good evening. Welcome to Stir Crazy. I'm Patrick Fogarty, back in my domain in Devon, behind the bar basically for this, one of my favourite sort of topics tonight, and we're doing it in two parts. So the first part is this side of Christmas, and the second part will be the other side of Christmas, and we're talking absinthe. And this is an astonishing subject. It's a really maligned spirit, and we've got two amazing drinks for you this week. I'm going to start with a little bit. I'm not a Bible person, but I'm going to start with a quote from the Bible, and it's the book of Revelations, chapter 10, verse 8. And it basically starts, "The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on all the springs and waters. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter." On a day where Donald Trump has just lost, yes, maybe not a bit of Revelations, it's not needed. So, but that is one of the really early sort of precursors for wormwood as a thing. It was a bitter plant, and wormwood is the magical ingredient in all absinthe. And the principal botanicals of absinthe is Artemisia absinthium, or grand wormwood. And it is this wormwood, this bitter herb, that is the heart and soul of these. It's also in some great things like Benedictine as well, and other liqueurs all over France. Vermouth is named after wormwood, and it is a truly fantastic ingredient, and it is so maligned. So what are the other ingredients in absinthe? Well, they are green anise or sweet anise, the Florence fennel, and these are often called the Holy Trinity of absinthe. They are the three core ingredients that really make the heart and soul of most absinthes. And then there's loads of other ones. It's like hyssop, melissa, star anise, angelica, peppermint, coriander, veronica. There is a whole host that you can put in there as well. But it is that fennel, anise and absinthium, the wormwood, that is really at its core. So, without much ado, what's in the box? So you should have all received your boxes, and in there you will have a nice bottle of tonic. This is for the first drink, and then you should have 3 little bottles this week. 1, 3, 4. We should also have in here the garnish bag with desiccated coconut, and I think that's it. Now I'm missing my straw, can't miss that, so we need that as well. So I'm going to put my little box away, and then what we want for this first drink is these two ingredients. It's a really simple binary drink, the first one. I'm going to put 3 and 4 to one side. The other thing we have in there is number 2, which is a little jar full of a little red syrup, and this is a paint. And so what we've done is we've taken pectin and we've reduced down a phenomenally flavoured syrup. And you should have done this just before, at the very beginning, is painted a strip and let it dry in your actual glass, in a highball glass, and that's what we need for this one. So I'm just going to do that and pop them to one side, just on this side there, just so that it dries. So a really good thing is like a wide paintbrush or a pastry brush. You can use your finger, it's just as good, or the back of a spoon, that would work as well. So that is my garnish done for that drink, and I'm just going to leave that there for a little second. So the other things we need for this is a cocktail strainer, so you need one of these, or any sealable container. Those who've been with us before will know that you can use anything from a jam jar to a Tupperware tin or anything like that, anything you can use. You then need something to stir with. I'm using a bar spoon, you can use a chopstick, you can use a straw, it's that easy. You will need ice. So I've got some nice big ice here, and I'm going to be using that. You'll obviously need your highball glass and a rocks glass for the second drink. In place of a rocks glass for the second drink, I'm using the original glass, which is a little sake cup. So we'll get to that later. The other thing we need is an egg, and that's for the egg white. So we'll be using that in the second drink, so again, don't do that now. So it's quite a simple one with the first drink, and it's called the White Rabbit. We are talking white absinthe today. We're not going green absinthe, we're going all about the white absinthe. And it's, a lot of people expect it, they call it the green fairy, but it's not all green. So we're about dispelling myths in this. It's part one of dispelling the myths of absinthe. So we're going to start with the very first thing, that all absinthe is green. And so it's not. We've got some fantastic white absinthe. We've got this amazing belter from Hendrick's Absinthe, produced last year. It's produced in Girvan in Scotland and at the House of Botanicals up there, and it is absolutely astonishing, and I'll get to that in a second. The other one we have tonight is Maison Fontaine, and this is an absolutely delicious French absinthe from Pontellier, and again, it just wins all sorts of awards. In both of the cocktails this week, we have Kokoro Gin liqueurs. So we've got blueberry and lemongrass liqueur, and we've got this astonishing cherry blossom Sakura liqueur as well. So both really great liqueurs from Japan, and yeah, these all really sing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the first drink, and I call it the White Rabbit because everyone knows the Green Fairy and they all know it's a bit trippy, and the White Rabbit, we all know the song, and it's going down the rabbit hole. It's a little bit of Alice in Wonderland, it's got some colour and everything else in it. So what I've got in there, you can kind of see my paint in the actual glass now, and that's down one side. And then what I'm going to do is in this glass, I've got a mix of 30 ml of the Hendrick's Absinthe and 15 ml of the Kokoro Gin. Now, we're just going to pop that into the bottom of the glass, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some ice cubes and place those into the glass like that, so that they're in there. Then I'm going to crack open my tonic. This is so simple. It's like, who would have thought absinthe and tonic go well together? But they really do. You've got the bitterness of quinine, and you've got this lovely bitterness of the wormwood in there as well. And I'm just going to pour that down the side of this. And now you can really see the paint shine up with the white there. So you can probably see that there, how that really is. And that's a flavoured paint as well. So the flavours will come out in that into the drink as well. And this lovely sort of blue that we get from this blueberry and lemongrass liqueur from Kokoro, and these flavours just all melt together and sing and just really come together. So this is the first drink, and it's called White Rabbit, and it takes you down the rabbit hole. This is what you need your straw for, and so I'm going to say cheers. I'm going to have a sip of this. Now you'll get anise straight away, but you'll also get rose, you'll get a bit of elderflower, you'll get also a little bit of cucumber. And so, as with all Hendrick's, and I've got a couple up here, I've got Hendrick's Original and I've got the Orbium, which actually has wormwood in as well, but it has rose and cucumber at its heart. Also in there, there is a couple others as well. There's juniper in that absinthe as well, so you're getting that little bit of ginny hit as well. And then also you've got this lovely star anise in there. You've got a bit of neroli oil and an orange distillate as well, and a little bit of elderflower. And so all of these things bind together to create almost a absinthe that is kind of crossover with gin, and it's sort of delicious. It's a little bit lower ABV, which allows all the flavours to explode on the palate. And so this one comes in at 48%, and it is delicious. So we will have a couple of bottles of this at our new bottle shop, which is down on Timoth Seafront, which is at Halulu. So there will only be a couple of bottles down there, but we can order it and pre-order it in for you when we can get more of it. So cheers. Here's to your first absinthe drink. It might be your very first absinthe drink. So I hope this really changes your mind on what is possible with absinthe as well. One of the things I love with absinthe is it has this immense history. And you'll get this lovely anise flavour, and it's like, don't be afraid of anise. It's like, a lot of people, they think of it and they think of the pastisses and stuff like that and bad experiences and drinking too much, or they do shots of absinthe, and it shouldn't be done in shots. It should always be done diluted and watered down and thinned in a cocktail as well, and it's a great way to drink it. So with the history of absinthe. We're going to diverge away from some of the green absinthes, and we're going to go to the very, very past first. And it's like, we'll go straight back to sort of really far back. We're going to Pythagoras. He used to say that it would ease childbirth and virgins to get rid of the scab. So it had these things going way back to ancient Greece, and Hippocrates said it cured flatulence. And in the Middle Ages, it was used to cure ringworm. And did it do all these things? Possibly. It's one of those sort of magic herbs, a bit like juniper. It goes all the way back through time. And like juniper is to gin, wormwood is to absinthe, to vermouth, and to so many other herbal liqueurs as well. And so when we actually look at these things, we go back to its origins, and we go back to ancient Egypt. It was used as a cure-all there as well. And a lot of these herbs that we have today, and that are quite often in our drinks, they started off as tonics and medicines, and that's how they got into the thing. That's how gin started, if you watched our gin masterclass, and it sort of all started with those. And so this has its origins actually not in France, but in Switzerland. And one of the great things about white absinthe is it's called Suisse, or La Bleue, blue absinthe. And so this one here, for instance, which is La Fille Excess, which is a sort of super premium absinthe from La Fille, is the Suisse, and it is in a lovely blue bottle, but it is clear. And then we've also got their Blanche, which again is clear. And so these both are white absinthes, and they're of that Swiss style. And so when absinthe was first created, it was created in around 1789 to 99, and it was in Cuvée in Switzerland. And it was a French exile. He was Dr. Pierre Ordinaire, or Ordinary Pete, and he created it as a health tonic. He had two housekeepers, and they were the Henriot sisters. And so these two sisters, they took the recipe, and they could have created it, and he took credit, but he was the one who published it, and so he was the first sort of written down absinthe recipe with wormwood. The sisters then took it, and they sold it to Major Daniel Henry Dubiet. And Dubiet's daughter married a chap called Henry Louis Pernod, and they built a distillery in Cuvée. And this distillery is Pernod. And so their second distillery was in a place called Pontellier, and that was across the border in France. So if you're looking at Pontellier and Cuvée, they're kind of in the middle of the border of France. So as you go down that border of Germany, Switzerland, and all the rest of it, you've got the Swiss border, and at the top of the Swiss border there in France, you've got on one side of the border Cuvée, and the other side of the border Pontellier. And so the second distillery was the home of these guys, which we all know. We all know Pernod Pastis, and I'll get to that later on, but I'm not going to go too deep into that because that's for round two. And so this second distillery was created and to keep up with demand, and it became very French, and it was this ritual of doing absinthe. And so for me, one of the ultimate rituals of absinthe is doing the absinthe fountain. When I first started bartending, there was a way we used to do it. This is back in the 90s, so it's going back 3 decades now. And it was a false ritual, which was about flaming the absinthe. So we would take the sugar cube, we would soak it in absinthe, we'd set fire to it, we would stir it into the drink would catch fire, and it was all quite flamboyant. And you've got to think about flaming Lamborghinis, all those kind of things as drinks back in the 90s. And it was one of those drinks. It was very showy, and it was all wrong. And it was done by a company that produced an absinthe in Czechoslovakia. And this is called the Czech method, and they sort of said this is the historical Czech method, but no one can find a record of it before 1990s of ever being done. So it's kind of a false, it was done as marketing. This was kind of further propagated, this myth of burning the absinthe and burning the sugar and everything into it, by the film Moulin Rouge, which we all know, and with Nicole Kidman. And they do it in that, and you can see them all burning the absinthe and that, and it was all false. It was the wrong way to do it. The correct way to do it, and there are loads and loads and loads of historical documents to support this, is to actually have a thing called the absinthe drip. And so you might have seen one of these before, which is an absinthe spoon, and this is a Lafite absinthe spoon. And what I'm going to do here is this lovely, lovely thing on my side here. This is an absinthe fountain. I filled it with ice water, so it's super cold, and I filtered the water first, and I then put that in. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to take my absinthe excess, and I'm going to pour in there a shot of that in there. Now, when we do absinthe, we want to kind of do a 3-to-1 ratio of the water to absinthe. So that's a single measure in there. And then what I will do is my absinthe spoon has a little nick on it, and I can pop that on top and put it in the centre. And then just pop him back. What I do is I just get my absinthe fountain drip, drip, dripping. Oh, always the case. Let's get him out and get a fresh one. So I'm going to pop him under the fountain, and I'm just going to, what I want to do is just get enough of that water flowing to start. Come on, you, which way are you going? You're not going that way. It's like working with children and animals. There we go. So you can see him dripping away now. I'm just going to move that under so that he hits the top of the spoon. I'm just going to leave him for a minute whilst he does that, and he'll slowly drip, drip, drip away and fill my glass with the lovely thing. And this is a ritual of doing absinthe that goes back hundreds of years, and it was a way of creating it. And we even have another version of it here, which is, if I take this here, I'm going to show you as well. This is a lovely device called a balancier, and what I can do with this is, if I have water, and I'm just going to come on the other side for this and decant some water into there, so we can watch my little balancier going. And what will happen is the balancier goes tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. And so if you have your sugar on the spoon in between it, it will capture that and go into the actual glass as well. So this was like an individual fountain that you can buy, and it's called a balancier. And they're lovely little things. They're very hypnotic to watch. It's almost like a metronome when it's going and tick-tocking back and forwards. And I absolutely love this. And there are other ways of doing as well. There's things like this here, which again has little holes in it. You can put the sugar on there, the little square there. And the sugar goes on there, you fill it with ice water, and it will drip, drip, drip into the glass again. And this ritual is performed, and it's slow, it's methodical, and you can see there, as this drips into the glass, I have a lovely cloudy, cloudy liquid that is coming forward there. And so, just lose that a second. And it's this cloudy liquid, is this, where it goes cloudy is called the louche. And the louche is caused by chemicals within the fennel and star anise. And in cheap absinthes from the 90s, they didn't do the louche. They had green dye in them, they had all sorts of horrible chemicals into them. And it was these chemicals that they didn't want it, because they didn't do the louche, they knew it was cheaper, and so that's why they came up with this kind of flaming it to detract away from doing the authentic way of doing it, which is this louche. And so when we get to absinthe, it's one of these lovely, lovely, lovely things. Now what happens with this, it's like when you add water to high strength spirits, they will quite often sort of develop so much more on the palate. And so all I'm going to do now, you can sort of see that lovely louche there. I'm going to pop my spoon to one side, and then when you drink the absinthe, first of all, the aromas sing and with water, and the sweetness will balance back the bitterness. and you get this delicious, creamy, velvety texture with absinthe. And the palate just grows and grows and grows and grows. Whilst if you have just neat absinthe, you get a palate burn, you get the strength of the absinthe, and it burns your palate, it burns your senses, and it's not the most pleasant way of drinking it. This way, everything sings and comes together in a really delicious, luxurious mouthfeel. And so, it's one of those lovely, lovely drinks. And the Pontellier family, the family of Pernod was sort of this great family, and they produced these great liquids. And we then sort of jump across from France and Switzerland, and we go across to the Americas, where cocktail culture was really starting to come off. And we head to that real sort of home of debauchery and cocktails, which was New Orleans in the 1830s, 1840s. And Sazerac, which is this wonderful cocktail, was created there. So if you purchase one of our sort of cocktails in the middle in the pouch, that is a Sazerac cocktail. You've just got to pour that. It should be kept chilled in your fridge. Just pour it into a glass, and it's a cocktail to go, which I'm going to show you how to make now. So you can do that. And so I'm just going to pop that down there for later. And so what I've got with my Sazerac cocktail is we are using in your one a bullet rye. So the Sazerac is generally a rye whiskey cocktail nowadays. Originally it would be made with cognac, and the reason why they stopped using cognac was part of the history of why absinthe became so popular as well is because of a bug called phylloxera, and it was this phylloxera bug killed off the grapes made the cognac, and they couldn't make any more cognac, and so America had to find a substitute, and they had loads of grain, they had corn, they had rye, and they started creating bourbons and whiskies as a result as well, and these started taking over and displacing in cocktails what was cognac for rye, and this happened with things like the mint julep, and it also happened with this drink, which is a Sazerac. And Sazerac's one of these bartender-loved cocktails, and it's quite boozy, it's quite strong, and it's really delicious. So the one you've got is a straight rye Sazerac, and it's kind of typical of what you would have found then. What we do now is we try to, quite often, we will do it with cognac and rye, so we get a balance of those flavours. A bit like when we went back to our early mint juleps, right back at the beginning of Stir Crazy. When we made our Augustus julep, we used whiskey and cognac together, and they really, really played together well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two really much of my absolute favourite products, and I'm going to make it with that, a classic 50-50 blend of spirits rather than the straight rye. Straight rye, you just double up that instead of using half and half. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, this is a drink that calls for me to just chill the glass down first. So I like a nice cold glass when we're making this, and I'm just going to use my old-fashioned glass or my rocks glass. And so yeah, just want to do that, and just want to chill the glass down. And then what I'm going to do in there is you put a little bit of absinthe in it, and you rinse the glass with absinthe. Now I don't like throwing, because you discard the rest of the absinthe, and I don't like throwing this stuff away, it's too good, especially when I'm using some lovely excess absinthe. And I mean, this is kind of 90-100 pound a bottle absinthe, so it's really delicious stuff. So it's this kind of ultra premium special edition one that they did. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to spray some of that in. You just see it looshes as it hits that ice cube, and that will coat the inside of the glass. And at the moment I'm getting an explosion of release in the room, and I'm just going to stir that down a little bit more, just to chill the glass a bit. And as that glass chills, so I'm just going to leave that for a second longer, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a mixing glass. I'm going to put a couple of cubes in there, and we're going to pour in 1.5 ounces, so about 35 ml of rye. Now this is Rittenhouse 100, and it's, for me, bang for buck, best rye in the world, and always have a bottle. It's astonishing. It's bottled in bond, and it's 100% proof, so it's 50% alcohol, really boozy, but the flavour on it is just incredible, and just wow, incredible. It's so good. And then I'm going to use 1.5 ounces or 35 ml of cognac, and here I'm using Martell cognac, and I'm using the VS, and yeah, it's lovely. It's a single distillery cognac. And that, my next ingredient is this, which is one of these magic ingredients, and the whole reason this drink exists is because of this. And so the Sazerac was kind of born in 1850, and it was born at a place called the Sazerac Coffee House. And Sazerac was a name of cognac. It was produced in France, and it would come across, and the Sazerac house would basically bring the cognac across. So the Sazerac Coffee House was obviously sold more than coffee. It was very boozy, and just down the road from that there was a pharmacy where a pharmacist, Anton Amédée Peychaud, produced his proprietary bitters. And that's what these are, these lovely sort of bright pink, red, sort of garnet coloured bitters. And he produced these there, and it was as early as the 1930s he was producing that, so just down the road from it. And so Peychaud, this became something that was used in cocktails all over New Orleans. And so Peychaud even advertised in 1857 that he would tout the availability of this product at the Sazerac house. And so I'm going to put in 4 dashes of the Peychaud's bitters in there. And then I'm also, now we can use Angostura bitters like we have in the other one, but the one I'm using here is actually Bocca's bitters, which is a really ancient bitters that they lost completely, and then they found a bottle. They basically went in, they mass spectrographed it, they recreated it, and I'm just going to put in 1 and a bit dashes of that there, and this will add a little bit of spice and everything else to it. And so I'll add those in as well. The last thing I want to do is add in just a little bit of sugar syrup. So this is very much kind of a sort of an old-fashioned cocktail as well. So as with the old-fashioned, it was whiskey, bourbon with sugar and bitters. So this kind of has a lot of those same ingredients, but obviously if you remember in there, we have the absinthe in there as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to discard that down into that. And in my glass, you can really smell the absinthe there, but it's not going to overpower the drink in any way, shape or form. And then I'm going to take my stirring spoon and just stir that down, and just the stirring will dilute it a bit. It will mix all the ingredients up, and it will chill it. And so obviously I'm using a mixing glass here. You can do this straight in a glass if you want. That's more than easy to do. You can serve this drink over ice. You can serve it in a martini glass, or you can serve it in a rocks glass as well. And it's like a old-fashioned on steroids. Anyone who's had an old-fashioned cocktail, which is probably most people, will know that that drink is just delicious. And this is like just flavour amped up times 10. And you can see the colour there. It's got a lovely red tint from that Peychaud's bitters. And the last thing I'm going to do with this is just express a peel of lemon across it. It just has so many flavours going on in there, and it's like this to me is a just sensational cocktail. And it's like the one we've done with Bullet Rye, which is again it's a really amazing rye whiskey. It really pops on flavour, and it's a bit more commercial and it's easier to find than this as well. That's why we kind of used it, because when you want to buy these things at home, it's quite easier to find this in a supermarket rather than finding Rittenhouse 100, which is kind of obscure bartender product. So cheers, this is the second cocktail, which is a Sazerac. It is without doubt delicious, and so I hope you like that. So as I said, the phylloxera plague, which kind of hit in 1862, kind of killed off a lot of whiskey production came about and got really, really good because phylloxera killed off grapes, and everyone drank wine, everyone drank brandy. And so when they couldn't drink brandy, they turned to other spirits, and when they couldn't drink wine, they turned to other spirits. And part of the reason why absinthe sort of took off was really to do with this fact that people in France couldn't drink their usual wine because all of the grapes were decimated by this little invader from America called phylloxera, this little parasitic beetle that gets into the vines and it just destroys them. And so they overcame this by getting grapevines from America and then grafting onto that, and it gave the immunity to phylloxera to their own vines. But this took decades for this to happen, and for them to even figure out what was killing all the vines as well. And it was, it was us lovely Brits who kind of did that, because we brought it back from America, we brought it back to Kew Gardens, it then destroyed all the British grapes, and then of course it went across the channel and then started destroying all of Europe's grapes as well. And so as a result, not only did it sort of take away cognac out of the occasion on a Sazerac cocktail, it also meant that your average Joe in France couldn't really drink much. And so this combined with a war effort going on in Africa where there was a lot of malaria, and the troops were prescribed absinthe to actually get rid of, a bit like quinine with tonic water with our troops in India. But in Africa with the French troops, they were given absinthe, and the wormwood was seen as the same thing. It was anti-malarial, and so again it was one of these health tonics that were given to their troops. And so these troops came back, they brought back this lovely thirst for absinthe with them, combined with phylloxera wiping out all of their grapes. Absinthe distilleries started popping up everywhere, all over France, and production went absolutely bonkers. So in the space of 1 year, from 1870 to 1871, consumption went fivefold, and it got to the point where they were producing 220 million litres a year at this time as well. And it was like by 1870 the empire had fallen, Napoleon III had abdicated, Paris was besieged by the Prussians, and just seemed like everything was going wrong. And so they drank and they drank and they drank and they drank. And so it's really good that out of that sort of crappiness became this great culture that was the cafe culture and the bohemian culture. And so from this, where all the bohemians were coming down and they were drinking in the cafes and they were sharing ideas and they were sharing philosophy, and they were the people like Paul Verlaine, Arthur Rimbaud, Manet, Degas, Toulouse-Lautrec, of course Toulouse-Lautrec, and of course Vincent van Gogh, who after getting really hammered with Paul Gauguin, obviously kind of zero, and he was drinking absinthe. And so absinthe started getting this reputation for being a little bit debauched, a little bit naughty, and it started getting this mythological status that it was for the Bohemians. And it used to be, back in the 1850s, something that was reserved for the kind of the bourgeois classes, the upper classes. And they would drink it, and you would have these astonishing names. And a couple of the ones we'll get to when I do the next one are things like Jade here, which is the Oxygène, which is an oxygenated absinthe. And this has been recreated from ancient bottles of absinthe, again found in cellars in France of aristocracy, and it is astonishing, and it is so good. It's one of my favourites there. And but we'll get to that another day, and that's going to be on part 2. So we're going to go all about those green absinthes and things like that, and we'll go into more detail about how absinthe evolved and everything else with that as well. But you also had, then going forward a little bit more, you had people like Oscar Wilde, you had Edward Crowley, who was the Order of the Golden Dawn, and nutters like that, who were all doing absinthe. And you had Hemingway, and he wrote in a 1931 letter, "Got tight last night on absinthe and did knife tricks." And what's not better than that than Hemingway doing knife tricks? Apparently he was throwing them, they got stuck in the piano and all sorts of things in the bar. And so, yeah, it got this sort of nutty sort of reputation. And just as you had in America this temperance movement in the 1920s, this movement started much earlier. And it started, again, there was a temperance movement that started in France and Switzerland and other places as well, and across Europe, where religious movements were coming to the fore and they were trying to curb the excesses of alcohol and the excesses of the bohemian culture and debauchery and bourgeois. And so they would try and find scapegoats. And just as with gin, there were court cases about people dying on absinthe. There was a super famous one in France, and it was called the Absinthe Murders. And it was a chap called Jean Lanfray, and it was in 28th of August 1905, and he basically went on the mother of all benders. And he didn't do it alone, he went with his father-in-law. So they started off the day and they consumed 7 glasses of wine, 6 glasses of cognac, a coffee laced with brandy, 2 creme de menthe, and then right at the end of it, after eating a sandwich, they had 2 glasses of absinthe. He then went home, asked his wife to clean his shoes. She told him to get knotted. He took out his shotgun and he shot his kids and his wife, and then he turned it on himself, and he was so drunk he blew his ear off. His father-in-law, who was living just down the road, heard all the commotion, heard it all happening, raced in and didn't catch them in time. He had drunk everything that Jean Lanfray had drunk, including the absinthe. It matched him drink for drink. And this became the Absinthe Murders. And absinthe got, the 2 glasses of absinthe at the end of it got pilloried in the press, and it was all about absinthe. It was all about the horrors of absinthe. This is what absinthe causes to you. And he went to the guillotine, obviously, and he was convicted. And it was the start, this was kind of the start of the culmination of absinthe. It was another sort of 10 years before they really got rid of absinthe. And it was in 2014 they got rid of absinthe, and surprisingly that was just before the war started. And so again, there were too many people getting drunk. They needed the troops to stop drinking and get back and start fighting. And so absinthe was made illegal. The prohibition of absinthe started, and this happened across Europe, and production stopped, all of it stopped, and you would start having little bits creep in here. They were producing a bit in Spain and Portugal. It never got made illegal there, but it was only minimal amounts that were there, and it started getting this kind of mythological status with absinthe, and all of these myths started coming up about why it was made illegal. And it turned you mad, it turned you insane, it caused you to rot, it caused your brain to rot, all these things that would come about from it. And it was this evil Satan stuff. And it was all just bad PR. And it was brought about quite often by the wine lobbies, just as with the gin lobbies back in the 1800s in England, where the beer lobbies were trying to disparage against drinking of gin. And so this same thing happened, this sort of on opposite sides of the Atlantic, and it happened to a bigger degree in America, obviously, when we had Prohibition. That really did hit all alcohol. And so it was religion, it was all sorts of things. It was a perfect storm to get rid of it with the war and everything like that, the First World War. And so absinthe was made illegal. And that was it. It was kind of over until the early 90s, and a thing called the EU started. One of these sort of weird little things that happened when the EU started all their laws and started getting centralised. And when all these laws got centralised, they couldn't have a different law for Spain, which could produce absinthe and drink it, than France. They had to be the same. They had to try and unify them a bit. And so a lot of the laws that were these little bylaws, obscure laws, and things that just didn't really exist just kind of disappeared. And it sort of, no one really noticed. and that absinthe was suddenly legal again because no one told anyone. It wasn't, no one realised it was. It was completely unintentional and it was a happy accident. And we go back and we think of the 70s and things like that, and people in the 70s, they had this mythological status with absinthe as well, where they thought it was hallucinogenic, and the Green Fairy, as its name was, which kind of came from artwork and the Muse and things like that, the Green Muse, and from certain paintings by Degas and people like that. And but the real myth of hallucinogenic absinthe, and it is just complete myth, and it's been completely disproven, is because it's a simple thing. When they looked at the chemical compound in the 70s, they realised that the active ingredient in absinthe, in wormwood, which is called thuja, and this little chemical is a menthol-like terpene, and it has structural similarities with another one, which is called tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. Anyone who's smoked a reefer, smoked a spliff, smoked big weed will know that THC is the magic ingredient. And this similarity of how it looked and how it engages with the brain, people just assumed that the thujone within absinthe made you hallucinate, and it had the same properties as THC. And newsflash, it doesn't. And so, yeah, it was like just complete ignorance that people started saying it's hallucinogenic. Of course, then bartenders, when you started getting this Czech stuff coming about in the 90s that I spoke about earlier, they said, yeah, this stuff makes you trip, it gets you high, da 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 da, and they propagated the myth. And then you have things like the Moulin Rouge, where they're all flying and tripping their head off on absinthe, and again, it just perpetuates the myth. It's not. So, absinthe, what is it? It's basically gin made, strong gin made with wormwood, not juniper. That is it. And other things like fennel and stuff like that. The botanicals are different, but it is no more trippy than gin. And just as gin doesn't make you cry and weep and maudlin, that's the alcohol, this doesn't make you trip or hallucinate. Drinking too much of it, you might start seeing things. And so that would be it. Now, why is it crystal clear? Well, this is how it comes out of the distillate. So when we distill any spirit, it comes out clear. A distillate is always clear. Anything you add to it gives it colour. If you put it in a barrel, it gives it colour. So the difference between this and, say, one of my green fellas behind me is chlorophyll. And those have a second process that they've gone through. This doesn't. This is straight out still, and then sometimes diluted down, sometimes at distillate strength. But with most Swiss ones, or these bleu, Absinthe bleu, they are generally around in the mid-50s, whereas the others can go up to the 70% alcohol. So these tend to be a little bit softer, a little bit more delicate, and they're a great introduction to absinthe because of that, because they don't have that big punch to the gut that the heavyweights of green absinthe does. And so, when did absinthe really start again? Well, I said about the Czech one in the 90s. It doesn't really count because it wasn't proper absinthe. It was nasty, it was cheap, it was just grim. It was two people. It was a guy called George Rowley and Marie-Claude Delahaye. And Marie-Claude Delahaye, she owned the Absinthe Museum in France, and she knew all about it, and she went into partnership with this guy, George Rowley, and he basically discovered by accident that absinthe was legal and thought, wow, newsflash, let's look into this. So partners up, sets up a business with Marie-Claude Delahaye, and they launch La Fée. And La Fée is the first absinthe to be made in France in 90 years, pretty much. Well, 85 years. So from 2015 to 2000, an absinthe wasn't made in France, at least not legally. This was the first. So they started producing La Fée, and they now have a few of them. They've got a few more here. You can sort of see the normal ones here. I've got another one which is, there's a whole load. They've got a Bohemian, which is a Czech style as well. And they have produced this whole sort of fleet of absinthes that are just exquisite, and they are amazing products. So I highly recommend them. If you want to splash out on a really good one, get an XS. They do a Parisienne and they do the Suisse, which is like the French and Swiss versions, but that's super premium ones. And they are really, really good. And so they started researching. They started fighting the legality. So when they first started doing this, there was a bit of an uproar because people were like going, oh, wait a second, that's illegal. And they went, actually, it's not. And I've got the facts to prove it. And so there was a few battles in the courts, and then he basically started researching Foujon, and it wasn't made illegal till much later, sort of like 2007 in the USA, when it started really being made legal over there. So it took a few more years to get across the line in America, a little bit more nervy with the FDA. And so yeah, it was back, and back with a real warmth. And so the first cocktail here, it's just a rinse, so it just really kisses the thing. You get a little hint of anise. With the Sazerac. The first one, you get that lovely softness of a new absinthe, and this was only released literally in 2019, late 2019. It was supposed to have a big explosion across bars in the UK. For some reason that didn't happen this year. Don't know why, but we won't go there. But anyhow, we're really lucky to be one of the first people to actually really showcase this to you. So I hope you really like those first two drinks. The last drink we're going to do tonight is actually from our latest menu, which is this bad boy, and somebody should have gone out this week. And it is the Gilded Herbarium and Natural Treasures. Now, when we made this menu, we spent 6 months researching it. We spent a lot of time doing it. We did all this research on the Natural History Museum. We made repeated trips. We went up there, we photographed the ceiling and the Hints Hall ceiling, and we photographed all the panels up there. And these are photographs I took up there, and we basically then recreated. Some of the panels didn't have text, so we had to create our own fonts. And we used the font creator. We took the letters from other letters. We then recreated it so that we could make the panels all the same. And then we researched all the different treasures of the museum that they had, and a lot of their sort of things they were doing as well. And so this latest one, this is one of my favourite drinks that's coming up, and it uses this astonishing Maison Fontaine absinthe. And this is from Pontellier. It's fairly new. It's about, I think they're about 10, 12 years old, and they are exceptional. It is the most awarded white absinthe, and it comes in a very simple, delicate bottle. It's quite a little bit Art Nouveau on the glass there. We're using the cherry blossom in this as well, and we're using also a jasmine syrup in it as well. And so the next drink is really this is a classic absinthe with a contemporary twist, and it is delicious. So the next drink is called the Guardian of the Path. It is based on an Absinthe Suissesse, and it is probably one of my all-time favourite drinks. And so the Suissesse is kind of like a frothy absinthe milkshake. It usually has creme de menthe and orgeat, and it's kind of a bit tiki and a bit naughty and everything else. But I'm just going to clean up a little bit here. And then what we're going to need for this one is egg white. If you're not happy using egg white, you can use something like the Misbetter's Bitters. If you are using Misbetter's Bitters, just always put in about the equivalent of the egg white of water as well. So if you're putting in 1/3 of your pipette of Misbetter's Bitters, you would put that in as well. And so the first thing I'm going to do is just separate this out. And I just want the white, so I'm going to keep the yolk. And what this does, it adds a bit of foam to the drink, and it also adds a lovely silky mouthfeel as well. And so eggs were used a lot in cocktails over the years, and we did a great one at the beginning of summer called La Grande Offre, the big egg, and we featured some really good egg cocktails in that. So in this you'll need bottles 3 and 4. And in 4 what we have is coconut cream with a bit of jasmine syrup. And so what I'm going to do is just put those in. Now usually an Absinthe Suisse would not use coconut cream, it would use double cream and a little bit of milk in there. And as I said, a bit of creme de menthe, but instead of creme de menthe, we're using a cherry blossom liqueur. And we are using a Maison Fontaine. And so when we did this originally, we actually infused the Maison Fontaine with the coconut cream and or coconut oil. The coconut would then infuse into the flavour in that. We then filtered off the oil. We had this lovely coconut flavoured absinthe, and then we basically put in with double cream and egg and all the rest of it as well. But we can't send out double cream in the post, so we tweaked the recipe a little bit for you at home. So I'm just going to empty in my second bottle, number 3, and in there you've got this lovely cherry blossom liqueur, as I said. And then this is a drink that we want to shake quite hard. And what I'm going to do is just pop in my ice cube there, just use fingers, and then I'm going to shake this for about 10-15 seconds. Now you can shake this without the ice first, or you can shake it with the ice and then strain it and then take the ice out. But what we want to do is kind of have a froth in this thing. Now, where am I? Let's just get my strainer. There we go. What I'm going to do is just strain that back in and then shake it a bit more. So I'm just going to discard my ice. Now you can do it either way around. You can do the ice first or out. I prefer to do it this way around, which kind of reverse shake, because you're aerating it even more as well. So another 10 seconds to 15 seconds. If you're not using egg, then just give it a shake for a bit longer with the ice, and that will give you enough more of an aeration on it. Now, as I said, I'm using a little Japanese sake glass for this one. You can use a rocks glass, you can use a small wine glass. I'm just going to pour that in. Perfect. So literally, can't get a drop more in. That's fantastic. So the last thing we're going to do is going to garnish this just with a little bit of desiccated coconut flakes. And you can use a little flower if they're in season. Looks really good with a nice little purple viola on top. It really shines out. And I'm just going to put a couple of those just on top, just to garnish it. And then when you taste that, there are certain people who have been asking us to do this cocktail. It's so crazy for a long time, and I hope you like it. It's a absinthe milkshake. It's just delicious. It's, as I said, one of my favourite cocktails. So when we make this, it's literally, we put in about 30 ml of this, 20 ml of that, coconut cream, about 30 ml of coconut cream, and then if you need to make a jasmine syrup, you can make a jasmine syrup. Just get dried jasmine flowers from an oriental supermarket, and or any little health food shop quite often has them. You just put them in hot water, make a tea, add sugar, make a jasmine syrup. It's that simple. And then that's it. It's super, super, super easy. And as you can see, it's just delicious. So yeah, that's our last one, and it's called The Guardian of the Path. And when we were doing our research at the Natural History Museum, we were looking at one of the ingredients was this. One of the treasures we looked at was a Honshu wolf pelt, and so it was this wolf pelt which was really drew me to it. And the Honshu wolf was existed in the Honshu province in Japan, and it went extinct. And it's one of these tragic stories where the actual naturalist who was trying to find specimens for the museum shot it for the museum. They took the pelt back, not realising they had just literally killed the last one in existence. And so it's kind of tragic, this thing. And we called it the Guardian of the Path is because its Latin name is Canis lupus hodophylax, which means path guardian in Greek. And in Japanese mythology, there is a legendary spirit in Japan, the Honshu wolf in mythology protects travellers. So it had to be called the Guardian of the Path. It was the guardian of travellers. If we're making a normal absinthe Suissesse, which is a classic New Orleans cocktail from about 1975, so it's a fairly modern classic, but it is delicious. You would use 1 to 1.5 ounces, so about 25 to 35 ml of absinthe. I always recommend using a Blanche Absinthe with it, not a green absinthe. Again, just because it's softer and more delicate and has more floral tones in it. You would then add a dash of orange flower water, about 10 to 15 ml of orgeat, and then you would also add the egg white, and then half and half, which is sort of half cream, half milk. And then some recipes call for about half an ounce of creme de menthe. So yeah, I hope that's kind of changed your mind on absinthe. These are kind of really elegant, delicate absinthes, and we haven't really gone on any of the Green Fairy trip. We haven't done any of that because I want to save all of that and a lot more of the knowledge and the tales and the history for the next absinthe one. This was all about getting you introduced to a category that is so often maligned and has so many brands in there now, and it's like, we're really lucky. I mean, I've got this one from Psychopomp in Bristol, this one from the Cotswolds Distillery, this one from Combier, which is one of the best liqueur makers in France. They're just all over, and now obviously Hendrix have produced their absolute belter in absinthe as well. And so there's new products coming to market all the time, and there's some really interesting ones out there. And so, yeah, it's been really good. It's like, I enjoyed tonight. I hope you've liked it. I haven't had any disasters happen. My wife is in Scotland, so hello to her up there. She's kind of stuck there in lockdown with her parents. I'm stuck here at my house with my parents, and yeah, I don't know when I'm going to see her again. So we will be bringing in a whole load more of these masterclasses throughout the winter period now, through lockdown and beyond. We also, next week, we've got Jake doing an absolutely fantastic one with some really cool ones, using one of the Hendrix products in it as well for our a signature cocktail from our menu 4, which was really cool, called To a Mouse, which was a menu based all about poetry. And so that was based on Ravi Burns, and it's all about pickles and about the pickles in drinks, and it's a really good one, and he'll blow your mind with that. And so you've got Jake next week. We've then got some really good ones coming on after that. We've got liqueurs coming after that. Down the line, we've got a great one on whiskey, which is all my ones from when I was in Scotland, dropping my wife up there a couple of months ago, and got to go around some great distilleries and make those for you. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. We are also doing lots of corporate and Christmas parties. Perfect example is this one. I'm doing the Mitchell Moores Property Awards this week, so that'll be going out on Thursday. We can include merch, branding, all the sorts of stuff to personalise it for whatever your event, your corporate event, so you don't miss out because of lockdown sucks and it's stopping us having fun. It's not. We've just got to be more inventive. We've got to be more creative with it. And we're there to help you. We will, our team will work with you to create your perfect event. And so, yeah, I hope you've liked tonight. I'm going to sign off. It's been really fun tonight. I'm going to drink the rest of my absinthe cocktails and try and feed some to my parents who are skulking in the lounge as we speak. So thank you very much. I will see you in 2 weeks for liqueurs with Jacob, and you have the lovely pleasure of Jacob next week doing an absolute belter of pickles. So go online, order your pickles cocktail box now so you don't miss out. We are opening also Halulu this week with our bottle shop. We've partnered up with the wine box in Torquay. We've got some great wines there, great liqueurs, spirits, beers. We've got some great stuff from people like Good Game doing charcuterie. We've got Quick's cheese. We've got black cow cheese and black cow vodka. There is all sorts down there. So Halulu Bar in Teignmouth on the seafront. We can do, you can click and collect with that, and it's turned retail for the winter period. We're adapting all our businesses through lockdown, and we hope you like what we're doing. So thanks again, and see you very, very soon. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.